Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in the pursuit of their culture war to distract people from the failures of Brexit, Conservative and other gammons are now attacking those who put themselves at risk to save lives. In this case, our lifeboat crews. But there's a bit of a pushback coming, just as with the football. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, I'd already talked about the problems with new legislation that the government are forcing through, which will make it a serious criminal offence to rescue anyone in distress off the coast of Britain if it then transpires they happen to be an undocumented migrant. In other words, if someone is fleeing war or persecution in their own land as a result of a regime that we may well have enabled, and they come here to seek asylum, if they find themselves in trouble at sea in sight of the coast and are rescued, their rescuer faces imprisonment. And you know what? This isn't even the standout act of evil in the legislation that the government are ramming through Parliament while we're distracted with the pandemic and Brexit. But it does create a showdown that the government must be made to lose. And a little chap called Nigel Farage, who seems to have waded in as well. There are basically two organisations that would be immediately hit by this legislation. The first is the Coast Guard, of course, which is under Priti Patel's Home Office. You know, she's their boss and in theory could interfere with their activities. That being said, if the Coast Guard do not rescue someone in distress, they would be breaking international maritime law. And besides, it isn't always obvious who is an asylum seeker and who is just a British family in distress until you've actually rescued them. But my main focus here is the RNLI, the Royal National Lifeboat Institution. It's a charity that exists entirely on donations, doesn't get any money from the government. They are largely made up of volunteers who give up their time and risk their safety to rescue others in real trouble. They save lives, and they're being attacked. For saving lives. Actually being attacked specifically for saving lives as well. Not just by the government, who are making their work a criminal offence. I'll be honest, even if this legislation passes through Parliament, and it surely will at some point, I can see the House of Lords throwing it back for a time, but the Conservatives absolutely have the time to ram it through before the next election, and probably fairly quickly. But let's say this legislation is in place. The RNLI rush out to rescue a dinghy full of what is clearly migrants even. Let's say there's not even any doubt about it. Fleeing to Britain, not just a load of pissed up Geordies on an ill-advised stag night stunt. They rescue them and bring them safely to shore. I don't think it's credible that anyone would be prosecuted. Because although the RNLI are being directly attacked by Nigel Farage, whom I'll get onto in a moment, the government are staying a little bit out of it. Priti Patel said that the law wouldn't actually affect the rescue operations of the Coast Guard or the RNLI. However, legal experts then sort of said to her, where in the legislation does it say they're exempt then? Because I don't see that and I know what I'm talking about. The law would apply to them just like it would anyone else. So these assurances coming from the Home Office are just a recognition that the country would flip its lid if a brave lifeboat crew were prosecuted by these cowards for saving lives. I'll be honest, I think there would be a huge backlash against anyone being prosecuted under this amended provision. I think this new law is intended to do two things. One, as with most Conservative Home Office legislation, it's simply intended to get the murderous lunatics in their movement on side. The raging bigots who want all foreigners to be clapped in irons at birth and put to slave work as soon as they can stand, who want to dispense with prisons and go straight to hanging. You know, people like the current Home Secretary. But like with most Tory Home Office legislation, it's not actually intended to do anything, to be used. It's just to give the show that they're doing something. But secondly, because the current Home Secretary is a little bit nuts, I think it's also intended to just scare people off rescuing those in distress out of fear of being prosecuted. But if the law were to ever come into effect, I think that Patel would probably intend to intervene in any prosecutions that would backfire politically, which is probably all of them. And even that is assuming that there would even exist a police officer who would wish to arrest someone for this, and a prosecutor who thinks it's worth taking selfless lifesavers to court. But still, the fact is that the RNLI could be prosecuted for their work under this legislation, and although the government are downplaying it, Nigel Farage is using it for his latest grift. The foghorn of ignorance, as Graham Hughes calls him, which is my favourite description, which is just as well as all the others are unbroadcastable. But the foghorn is back from America. That's good news, isn't it? He was supposed to strike it rich on the presidential campaign ticket last year. We thought we were shot of him. But then the pandemic messed it up. The pandemic's messing all sorts of things up. You know, he could have gone over there and retired in luxury. He tried to go again this year to do the same thing, but it was too late, you see. Someone really should have told him that the election was over and the orange one had lost. So after a few humiliating meetings where basically no bugger turned up, he's come back to shout at the sea again. Actually shouting at lifeboats in the sea this time, although I find his choice of target odd. For those who don't know, Nigel Farage in his time has been involved in a very serious car crash, as well as a plane crash. A man who makes a habit of emerging from wreckage, you would think would want to avoid taking on those who save lives when disaster strikes. It's to be hoped he never gets into difficulty himself out at sea. He's already been in a life-threatening situation on the road and in the air. There is only the sea left. This makes his target an odd one. Farage accused the RNLI of being a migrant taxi service, and as a consequence is dog whistling for the gammon hunting packs to go around attacking lifeboat crews. But I would like to ask the foghorn of ignorance two things. One, so he told us that Brexit would stop all these so-called migrant problems. You know, these problems that he thinks exist are all going to go away because the issue was EU membership. Well, we're no longer members of the EU, or of the customs union, or of the single market. There's no freedom of movement in any direction, and yet the claim now is that this is getting worse. I mean, I did try to point out that in the EU we had other EU agencies all working to manage asylum seekers. You know, that French authorities, for example, prevented quite a lot making it to Britain. That after Brexit, this would all stop. What's in it for other EU countries to stop them? They'll just go, oh, you want to go to Britain? Oh, off you go, son. But he's the one who said leaving the EU would sort it all out. So my question is, why hasn't it been sorted out yet? In fact, why is it that you're shouting louder because you're saying it's getting worse? Also, why are we now having to pay France £54 million to help out again? And my second question would be to ask, why is he in the country again? He promised he would leave if Brexit went badly. Promised. Well, we have businesses going under, workers losing their jobs only to be able to get new ones on half their old wages. You know, Swindon, for example, where they've now closed the car plant. Those workers, there are jobs there. Those workers are finding jobs on half the wages. We've got empty shelves in the supermarket, which is not replicated anywhere with access to the single market, including Northern Ireland, a part of the UK where the shelves are fine. And now Farage is saying that the migrant problem is actually getting worse. If that's not Brexit going badly, I really don't know what is. So why the hell is he still on our shores? But anyway, back to the RNLI. And they are hitting back by saying it's basically a simple case of British decency to rescue those in distress. Yes, it is. As a result of the attacks they've suffered from cretins like Farage, they've actually been getting a surge of new donations. I've done it myself. We'll also be donating the money that this video makes in the first week. If anyone else would like to donate, I'll put the details in the description below. Not that this is a call to do that specifically. It's a funny thing with charity, especially in the UK. I remember a few years ago, around about the Brexit time, a German comedian whose name I forget, I'm afraid. I don't really watch telly much. I shouldn't really forget, as we don't see many German comedians over here. I didn't even think they existed when I was growing up. But when asked about charity, he said they don't need to give to charity in Germany because they pay their taxes. And the statement was highlighting the fact that the work of a charity was actually to cover up government failures. I mean, you can argue like temples, churches, things like that are different. But in general, what do charities do? They cover for things that the government should do but doesn't. You know, or at least doesn't do enough of. We pay enough taxes ourselves to cover these things if we weren't giving so much to Tory scroungers. We know this because other countries on roughly the same levels of wealth can manage it themselves, and they don't need all this charity. But we do. We give a lot of money to Tory scroungers, and so we have the need for a lot of charities in the UK, and most are worthy. And we can't donate to all of them, so we choose. And so you will choose as well. Some people hopefully will choose to donate to the RNLI. Some will go, do you know what, these other causes as well. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, I used to have my favourites based on those who I felt were the most vulnerable. You know, as a result, I tended to favour children's and animal charities. Now I increasingly find myself donating to charities that come under fire from our, frankly, quite evil government. You know, the charities who, with all the other difficulties they have, now have legislation trying to ban their good work. You know, and of course their associated brigade of gammons after them as well. But as was pointed out by someone, there could also be some grim satisfaction gathered if we see reports in a week or two of a huge surge in donations for the RNLI. Because what that would do was represent the British public taking the side of Lifesavers against the murder clowns. You know, it presents an image that this isn't Britain. Attacking people who save lives, and it doesn't matter whose lives are being saved, that's not Britain. That's just the British government. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.